So recently I did a video slash podcast where I basically updated slash overviewed, if you will, the recent part 20 of the recent chapter 11 of Jovian16's, that's Jovian 16, their story called Amanda and Nicole. And this recent part was basically the last part, in chapter 11, and that chapter 11 has now concluded. But the way it concluded was on a cliffhanger. Yes, it did. As you all probably know, depending on how you viewed it, basically both the characters of Amanda and Nicole have fused together into one being. Now, this new being hasn't been given a new name yet, but I went with the name of Nicole, which is basically a combination of Amanda and Nicole's names, merged into one. Because as Amanda puts it, as they finish fusing together, she basically tells Nicole to let the thoughts join as one, basically join together, merge together into one thought process, into one mind. And now, with that said, and this new version of them, this new being that they have given birth to, if you will, has emerged. The question obviously is, what's next? Well, I kind of gave an idea, at the end of the recent update review, if you will. I always like to speculate. I always like to kind of speculate as to what could be up the road for this new, venture that they're going on. And to me, there's a lot of possibilities. Now, if there is one thing that's kind of negative about a cliffhanger, especially when it comes to these webcomic stories, and it's a cliffhanger that you will not resolve until maybe months later or something like that because you have other projects you're working on, sometimes that cliffhanger could be one that really takes a lot of thought processing into trying to figure out, okay, where do I go from here? As I've mentioned before, when they cliffhangered us with NanoShift and what happened with Jay, we have yet to hear anything out of that. And I think that's been about almost a year now, right? Almost been about a year, if not over a year. It's been in a cliffhanger status. So obviously, Jovian16 is realizing, or kind of possibly realizing, all right, I ended this on a cliffhanger with two unknown new characters off panel showing up. Oh, where do I go from here? Because the last time we saw Jay, she's basically in a puddled mess. Basically a puddled mess to where, you don't know what her mental state is, kind of deal. But hopefully that will be resolved in 2023. Not saying it will. But again, it's been one of those that have been stuck in cliffhanger Hades, if you will, because of, what is the next step. Same with another story they did called Beach Fun. Jovian16 did a story called Beach Fun where the character known as Barbara gets shape-shifting abilities, but abilities, I should say, that are beyond just shape-shifting, because later on in some of the final chapters and parts that they work on, Barbara is able to split herself into two and give herself two different names of Cindy and Janelle, and both of them seemingly are independent of Barbara because they acknowledge, basically them being, two parts of Barbara, if you will. So now we get to this one. What's cliffhangered at. And instead of splitting in two, we have the two characters merged into one. And the thoughts are merged into one. So the question is, what's the next step? Well, like I said, I brought up, some ideas at the end of the recent video podcast, if you will. And I kind of stick with them a little bit. I kind of still stick with those possibilities. But there could be other things that potentially could happen as well. For one, I could see this new Amanda Nicole character, as I call her, just having a little fun, reveling in her new existence, thanks to Amanda and Nicole, and having fun with her powers. Maybe just, I guess you could say pleasuring herself and all that, seeing how far, she could go with the powers that they both combined together, stuff like that. I could see her going the gooey state, maybe melting down into a puddle to be, relaxed, because if there's anything that Jovian16 character-wise has created, it's a character named Amber, and one of the things that Amber likes to do is relax in a liquefied, puddled state. So I wouldn't put it past him to, as part of the exploration of the combined powers into this new being, I wouldn't put it past him to have this new Amanda Nicole being basically be, basically be kind of like in favor of doing something like that to really see how far her powers can go. So I wouldn't be surprised that if he has her go the melty, gooey state and become a puddle for relaxation and eroticism, whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe she does develop the powers to split herself into multiple women, and all these multiple women that she splits herself into are still the fusion that Amanda and Nicole made her into. Basically, they're just like duplicates, clones, if you will. I could see her using the shape-shifting abilities to maybe turn into a car or a vehicle or whatever, or an animal. I mean, we kind of got an idea of how far these powers could go in the earlier chapters and parts of this, series. Especially when the characters, let their imaginations of fantasy run wild, whether it's while they're awake out and partying and encountering others, or when they're asleep. But I could also see him going, I could also see Jovian16, I should say, going a route that's kind of more story-based at times as well, along with all that. Like, I could see Amanda and Nicole, I should say, I could see Amanda and Nicole wanting to split apart, but the fused being, the fused entity that they become, being too dominant. And that maybe we find out that this fused being was actually someone from a past. Because remember, they got these powers through a spell book, which they have no idea, where this spell book came from or why it contained this magic in there. And storytelling-wise, we could get our answer that this being that they fused together into is basically a being from long ago that only used them for, used them to a certain point, to where eventually maybe they waited till they got more, evolved with their powers and attempted something like this. Now she'll look at them and be like, hey, I don't need you anymore. You've outlived your usefulness, kind of deal. Whatever the case may be. I could see that. I could see them trying to separate, and maybe you see like little visages, imprints of their faces pushing out of the sides of both, basically pushing out of the side of both sides of the new fusion's face, if you will. I could see that. Or I could see them embracing it, like, hey, we're the ones that brought this on ourselves, and it actually is pretty good, actually feels good. And maybe we do see an imprint of visage of the faces pushing out, maybe, through the upper region, if you know what I mean, the bosom region, or the, like I say, the face region, but instead of like trying to escape, you just see them moaning in pleasure because they are accepting of their new status. Who knows? There's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of possibilities that that Jovian16 can go in with this character. There really is. And I look forward to it. Now, how long, they keep this in cliffhanger status going into next year is beyond me. Because like I said in the other video podcast, they plan to basically work on other projects, some new ones. So it might be a while, it may not be, we'll see. Because it is, as one person put it, a tantalizing cliffhanger to end on, because now you wonder exactly where they're going to go from there. What's the next step? And like I said, these ideas that I've thrown out there, these speculated ideas, are just things I could see being, explored. I could see these things being explored as, possibilities for them to tackle, for Jovian16 to tackle along the way and even consider putting into the story. But we'll see. We shall see. Again, there's a lot of possibilities here. A lot of possibilities. How they come to be, that's up to what Jovian16 wants. But again, like I said, I could see them doing several of these things. I could see them having the fused version, go all liquidy and gooey and melty, relaxing, to basically be relaxed, kind of relax themselves, do it for eroticness or whatever. I could see them, exploring how far the powers could go by turning into inanimate vehicles like cars, motorcycles, maybe even animals like birds, whatever. Maybe even evaporate into nothingness, become one with the atmosphere and stuff. I could see a story development of, okay, maybe Amanda and Nicole want to get back to the normal lives, but they can't separate because, they've fallen basically into a trap of maybe a sorceress that they become being an actual sorceress from years ago whose essence was trapped in the book, and now she just used Amanda and Nicole to a certain extent to, wait for the moment that they would try something like this and basically take over. Or I could see them embracing it, and like I said, doing everything that I mentioned, where you see like visage imprints of their faces on the bosoms or the sides of the face moaning in ecstasy or something like that, because they're enjoying the new state they're in. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of possibilities. But I want to know what you guys think. And Jovian16, I know you're listening. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Comment down below, live chat during the premiere, like the video. Check me out at my Teespring store at BEW Roses Discussions, all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. Also, check me out. Did I say BW Roses Discussions? Or did I say my Teespring store? Sorry, I'm a little confused. I was thinking of both at once. Again, let me correct myself. Like I said, check out my Teespring store for merchandise you can't find anywhere else, in time for the holidays. Also, check me out at BW Roses Discussions, all your favorite audio podcast locations, except for Pandora. Yeah, I think that's how I put it. I do apologize if it felt like I went, made them more into one. Also, check me out at divanart.com, that's BVW1979. Also, support me at Venmo at Brian-Woman-2, Cash App at BW Roses98. Also, ladies and gentlemen, follow me at VENMO at BW Roses for content you can't get anywhere else, and support me at patreon.com. Says BW Roses with a $1, $3 tier. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are overall on this. Jovian16, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? What are you considering potentially for the next step, if you are considering it, at this time? Mr. Internet Man, all of you, I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are. Let me know down below, and I will talk to you all later.